happy to have the chance to introduce an individual who is going to and is doing a fabulous job for the Ohio State University Alumni Association, Jim Smith. I'm also happy to report that his real name, it is not an alias. Some of you worried about that, but then some of you worry about a lot of things. He is probably the best prepared person of the 10 alumni secretaries slash directors slash CEOs ever in the history of the organization. He had his first stint after school, after his degree in radio, television, and communications from Northwestern, with the World Wrestling Federation. I can think of no better preparation than Jim had. He is from Milford, Connecticut, went to Northwestern, got a master's degree from Ohio State. He left to do a little side job and then came back to Ohio State and became Associate Athletics Director under Andy Geiger, our athletic director at that time, and was responsible for marketing and sales for the athletic department, helped with the openings of the Schottenstein Center, the Jesse Owens Stadium, and the Bill Davis Stadium, as well as the renovation of Ohio Stadium. In 2000, he left Ohio State to become president and general manager of the Columbus Crew, and then left that to become president. No, I'm sorry. He didn't get to be president of the Atlantic Falcons, though he wanted to. He was the executive vice president in charge of marketing and other things for the Atlanta Falcons. Not a bad job for a kid from Milford, Connecticut. He came back to Ohio State and continues to build the relationships that he, with the skills he honed in those other positions, by becoming the president and executive director of Brutus Buckeye. Who needs one? And now has 530,000 bosses. And you thought being married was tough. I'm going to ask Jim to take the rostrum. I can assure you that the Ohio State University made a great choice in this, as did the Board of Directors of the Alumni Association. And I would ask you for a warm Rotary welcome for Jim Smith.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much, and I appreciate the flexibility in today's schedule. I think everybody may, or not everybody, but you may have seen that Columbus lost really a giant as a leader, but Ohio State and the Alumni Association also lost somebody very special this past week in William Loda, and so I'm going to head out to his funeral. So I appreciate you being flexible. If you haven't been to the Longaberger Alumni House, you might see that the Loda, the Bill and Susan Loda Career Management offices are in honor of them and their generosity. So I think there will be many people today at church at 1 o'clock. So I appreciate the flexibility of that. Dan, thank you for that introduction. Usually a lot of people are interested in how a guy from wrestling ends up at Ohio State once, nevertheless twice. But I've made it back here twice. It's really been an incredible opportunity to come back and be a Buckeye again. You know, every time you leave and maybe move away, you realize how special Ohio State is. And coming into this job, there are very few times you you follow two legends, right? And this is normally I get the introduction that Archie Griffin had the job before me, and everybody knows Archie's obviously history as an incredible football player and ambassador for Ohio State. But not many know that Dan is the true legend of Alumni Association directors. And I mean that sincerely. When you get in this business and you travel around the country and you meet with other executive directors, people always ask about Dan and how Dan was. And Dan was an incredible, he put this profession really at a level that was never done before and did an incredible job. So I'd like all of us to give Dan a round of applause for the absolute fantastic job he's done. So Dan, thank you. He asked me not to do that, so I've asked Dan to spend about 5 minutes just giving you a little bit of context of how this Alumni Association was formed, and then I'm going to give you the rest of the story of how it's operating today. So Dan, if you wouldn't mind coming up and sharing a little bit of the history of the Alumni Association with the group.
Now you can hold your applause. Thank you. Just out of curiosity, I'm going to steal your line, Jim. How many of you confess to having at least taken classes at Ohio State? We're having our own alumni meeting, Jim. That's terrific. It is an exemplary institution, and we are blessed because of so many traditions. But I wonder if you know when the Ohio State Alumni Association began. Anybody want to take a guess? Here's a quick math. It's 138 years old. Okay, never mind. I can tell you that the Alumni Association began the year after the first graduating class came back to celebrate and honor the next graduating class, and that was in I was not there. In 1869. It was a class of 8 people, and it had 1 woman in it. Very unusual at the time. The Alumni Association always has been a dues-paying organization. At that time, the dues were $1, which was more money then than it was now, I think. But then it was very loosely organized. And in 1911, William Oxley Thompson, then the president of the university, and Ralph Davenport Mershon called a constitutional convention, if you will, and they drafted a constitution by which an alumni association at The Ohio State University would operate. That same constitution actually remained in place and governs likely most of the operations still today. It was based on, first of all, being a self-governing alumni organization. It charged dues. At that time, the dues were $3 a person. It had then a membership. Those were the people who paid dues. Annually, they elected the board of directors. The board of directors ran the organization from a policy standpoint. It also had what was then called a Board of Visitors, which today is our Alumni Advisory Council. There's a representative for each college, each vice president, and now each regional campus, and a few other special interest areas. The Board of Directors at that time had 16 people, the chairman of the Board of Visitors, and 15 elected members. And they had alumni clubs. They went on for on and on and on. Fascinating, isn't it? We are now on our 10th alumni director, the one who frankly was, you might know, and some of you older fellows would, and gals would, we don't have any older gals, older fellows would know, was John B. Jack Fullen, who was the alumni secretary from 1928 until 1967. Fullen was a journalist, and he wrote in the alumni magazine every month called A Letter from Home. And he loved to be incisive and critical. And he was critical of Novice Fawcett, then president of the university, and a guy named Woody Hayes. You see, the Alumni Association ran an outfit called the Frontliners, which was a football recruiting group, very selective, but they were responsible when it was legal to do, very responsible for recruiting outstanding football players around the country. Woody and Jack disagreed about how long that ought to continue, and Woody put it out of business. Jack didn't like that, so he wrote about it. He wrote about it so extensively that the faculty council, who had become suspicious of this Rose Bowl stuff and athletics taking over academics, if you will, in colleges around the country, the faculty council voted to do away with their contract with the Pac-10, wherein the champion of the Big Ten would play in the Rose Bowl every year. And Fullen, in his magazine articles, supported that view extensively. And the faculty council put an end to champions going to the Rose Bowl. Well, in 1961, Ohio State won that championship, but they didn't get to go. Minnesota went because of that faculty council vote. Fullen was hung in effigy not only downtown, where the rallies had taken place, but all across the campus. The elections for the board of directors that year were very interesting. There was one slate of officers vowed to fire Fullen if they were elected, and that slate was headed by Jimmy Hull, a former president of ColumbusRotary and Ohio State's first NCAA basketball All-American. And honestly, I don't remember who was on the other slate, but Hull lost. However, the board was not convinced that Hull was going to lose, so they gave Fullen a sabbatical. They sent him to the University of Witwatersrand in South Africa for the entire time. Well, he came back to a job in 61, persevered, hired me in 65, sorry. Time flies when you're having fun. And then realizing what he had done, retired in 1967. The second most popular guy ever to hold the alumni secretary's job was Dr. Richard M Moll, M-A-L-L. You probably didn't know him by that name, but he was the judge on Channel 10's Traffic Court, which was a very popular show, and had been he was a professor of speech and had been very popular speaking on the alumni circuit for years. He unfortunately had health issues and passed away in 1973 at the age of 54. They hired some upstart who didn't know what he was doing. He hung around for 38 years, and then the next most well-known alumni director, Archie Griffin, came along, did the job very well for 10 years, and decided to take early retirement, making the way for one, Jim Smith. Jim and his wife have 4 kids. 3 of them were born at the Wexner Medical Center, I might add, and he is doing a fabulous job. He's off to a fast start, and we're going to hear, as Paul Harvey would have said, for you older folks, the rest of the story. Jim?
Thanks, Dan. That was excellent. Brutus, we know that you're on a tight timeline, so appreciate you being here. So how about a round of applause for Brutus? Oh, let's try that again. OH! There we go. Much better. Thank you. So I think Dan did a great job giving you a little bit of history, and he skipped about 20. How many years were you there, Dan? 38 years of history in that gap, if you noticed, because, of course, he's not going to tell you about his reign, but it was absolutely fantastic, and the organization is in tremendous shape because of him and really Archie. I just want to give you a little context of the role of the Alumni Association, so I'm going to read this because I think it sums it up really well. It's important to understand the role of alumni in the life of the university. We are and should be equal partners with faculty, students, and the administration. Alumni are the only permanent constituency. Faculty come and go, and we know administrators come and go. Students are supposed to come and go, and some take a little bit more time than others, but they all join this revered constituency known as the Alumni Association. Alumni have emotional ties to their alma mater, but we also have a self-interest in seeing our institution is always prospering. Alumni should not be relegated to being cheerleaders or check writers, and not all alumni are fans, and not all fans are alumni. Alumni can and should be encouraged to contribute much to their alma mater: advice, advocacy, resources, admissions assistance, fellowship. I would argue that the alumni represent the one core constituency that has no separate agenda. Alumni only want the new president or chancellor to be successful and seek only to help and to be a resource. And as I travel the country, whether it's here in Central Ohio or I'm out in Los Angeles or Naples, Florida, that's the one thing I hear the most. How can I help our university? That's what alumni want to know. And how do I get football tickets? So both of those things kind of go together. But it is true that alumni truly care about their university. And I think you went to Worcester, and I'm sure you have that same passion for Worcester that Buckeyes have for Ohio State. So let me give you a few stats. I think you mentioned about 530,000. We're just over 550,000 living alumni spread out across the world. So some quick stats for you. 350,000 or so have undergraduate degrees. 47,000 have 2 degrees, and 18,000 have more than 2 degrees. That's a little bit of who Ohio State is from an alumni perspective. The average age of an Ohio State alum is 49, and is slightly more male than female, though if I've watched the last 2 graduating classes go across the stage, and it's quickly starting to switch. There are far more females coming to Ohio State and graduating than there are males today. If you were in the College of Arts and Sciences, you're in great company, because over 200,000 of our graduates have degrees from arts and sciences. So that gives you kind of the demographics of who we are. Now, how does the Alumni Association support those folks? And Dan mentioned clubs and societies. Well, we have 161 clubs and societies that are around the world. Okay, so our 5 biggest clubs, so the difference between a club and a society, club is a geographic-based organization, so we have clubs throughout the country, and societies are based on your interests that you were in school. So we have one for the Alumni Band. Many of you have heard about that one in the past. And so the Alumni Band they're considered a society. So those are kind of the differences between the two. So if you have a special interest, you join a society. Now you also can be in both. And that's great when you're in both. Clubs are charged in getting together and providing One of the things we really focus on is that they provide a scholarship for a student from their area. So if you live in Houston and you join the club, you're not raising money for Ohio State. You're raising money for a Buckeye to come to Ohio State from your community. And I think that's one of the great things that clubs do. They get together, they watch football. They enjoy doing volunteer events together, but they also raise money to give back in their community. And that's what the one big thing we've learned from millennial Buckeyes is they really like those volunteer opportunities. So we also do a lot of career management. And just to give you a quick update, our LODA Alumni Career Management Office is very, very active. In this past year, we started a mentoring program, right? So one of the nice things that we understand is that Buckeyes alums like to mentor. And Buckeyes students and alums need mentors. So we've created this platform called Alumni Fire. In our first year, we had over 5,000 people sign up to either be a mentor or to be a mentee. And we're connecting those people on the terms that are convenient for each of you. So this could be via phone, it could be in person, it could be email. You pick the frequency that you want to be a part of, but it's something that we have found from a service perspective that our alumni are very interested in. We also have job boards. Okay, so we've all read about job postings. I just want to take if somebody were to take a random guess, this is a job placement, job boards for Buckeyes. So it's a kind of a closed loop. If you're looking for a Buckeye to hire, you can call the LOTA Career Management Office, and they'll post your job. Guess how many job postings we're getting a week? Anybody? Oh, well, that would be great. So we're getting 50 a week, okay, just for Buckeyes, and it's coming through just our career management office. So when you really do the math on that quickly, you can find a Buckeye through the LOTA Career Management Office. But I was a little surprised that we were posting that many jobs, and I think it just tells you a little bit about how Buckeyes really want to help each other out. We have to tell that story a little bit better, so if you'd share that with your HR departments, that would be great, because we'd like to get more Buckeyes working here and around the country. So we also do travel. We have an incredible travel program. And if you've ever been to a bowl game, it's really, I think, something Dan started, were these Buckeye Bashes. And it's the ultimate pep rally before a bowl game. So it's those are events that the Alumni Association put on, that we bring and provide all the resources for that, with our friends from athletics and trademark and licensing supporting us. Rick Van Brimmer in the back there has been a great partner for the Alumni Association, and we appreciate that support. And so, but those are the things that we do. We are the ultimate connectors. We are trying to keep our alumni connected to the university. And I'm also the voice of the alumni to the president. So I speak to the president every month. We have a one-on-one meeting, and I get the opportunity to share the feedback that I hear from around the country that comes into my email that people call about. I leave the athletic things out, right? We all know the ticket. The great situation is we have an incredible football team where there's more demand than there are seats. And when you have 550,000 alumni, we cannot make everybody happy. So that's one I leave off the list when I talk to the president. But when I do talk to him and I hear things about something that either they've heard or we haven't messaged well, or there's a concern that maybe they don't see him enough, I share all those things. That's the pipeline that was developed a long time ago between the Alumni Association and the president. And I believe that the university very much listens to what the alumni are thinking. We also have a program that we oversee all the annual giving. So we're the group that does the annual giving fundraising. And those are smaller gifts that are given to the university. And you may have seen the headline last week in the dispatch, the big number. That's not what we do. We're the little number. We're the folks that want to help start the relationship between the university and our alumni from a giving perspective. So we have that component of what we do as well. And then ultimately, I get the incredible pleasure of welcoming each of our new alumni each year into the family. And so at commencement, I get to be the final speaker. Now think about this. They've been sitting out there for 2.5 hours. And then here comes the alumni guy, right? And they're like, okay, what is he going to say? So my comments are always brief, as they will be today. They make a strong message of thanks, them thanking their families for their support throughout their time in school. And then finally, what I remind them is something that is true for every Buckeye graduate. You are now a Buckeye for life. And then I say, go Bucks. And that is what it's all about to be part of the Alumni Association, about being a Buckeye for life and giving and receiving that continual relationship with your university. And that's what the Alumni Association and our team is charged to do. So I thank you today for your time, and I hope you got a little snapshot of the history and then what we're doing today to keep that relationship and history going. Thank you very much.
All right, well, we still got some time for questions, so who's got a question? Oh, I'm sorry, Jim. I walked right in front of you.
Anybody have any questions?
Yes, sir. Several years ago, there was a change in the lifetime membership was dropped. How's the membership for the recent grads been since then?
So it's great. So I want to, if Kristen Watt is here, and she's on our board of directors, it is great that you asked that question, because that's a topic that's come up a number of times. I'm a life member. So I got in, so is Kristen. How many people are here are life members? Okay, great. You know, I can't tell you how many times I'm out at an event and somebody will come up and introduce themselves as a life member. It's a point of pride. And at some point in time, the association shifted away from offering life memberships and just doing the annual memberships. And I think that the board has challenged us to go back and look at that again and see if we potentially could bring that back. That was part of the switch from, we are no longer a dues-based organization. So we get we're funded from the university. So when you make a donation and become a member of the Alumni Association, that fee that you pay, that minimum $75, goes to the school or charity of your choice. It's not going directly. You can choose the Alumni Association, or you can choose Vet Med, or you can choose History. But wherever you donate that $75, that makes you a member of the Alumni Association. So that was a little bit of the change, but that question continues to come up, and it's something we're going to go back and look at. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Since you're with Andy Geiger, are you responsible for the tight seating in the shop?
Yes. No. So I was with Andy Geiger, and you can put that directly on me. I was part of the design team that stadium looks and how it looks today, and for better or for worse, yes. Sorry, I can't blame somebody else.
Yes, sir.
Jim, can you speak to the difference between the amount of money that is now collected since the dues structure has been done away with and it's all contributions?
Yeah. So I'm not quite sure what it was. I don't have the numbers here or what it was before, but this past year our annual giving team raised about $42 million. So I will tell you that's quite a bit. I think that's a bit more than what was raised prior to the switch from the dues base. Great. Thank you very much.
This meeting is adjourned.